There are only so many parts of Book 11 that I'm interested to get to, so I want to make a few comments about John Milton and comprehending him. And I think John Milton had a very complex and difficult character to comprehend. I think he's very hard. And I think when you read Paradise Lost, part of the difficulty in comprehending it is somewhat deliberate from Milton, because I think he wants there to be some amount of confusion. His intent, I think, is that we should be thinking about things for ourselves and not look to somebody else's words in reliance on the idea that when they say the word freedom, it means what we think it means. When they say the word piety, it means what we think it means. Bluntly, even Satan can talk about freedom if he wants to. And so, Milton's solution is this. In a world in which the truth manifests itself in many variation, scattered, overlapping, contradictory arguments, it forces the individual to make a distillation of those arguments to suit his or herself. And in doing that, they must be unique. In a world of chaotic opinions and conflicting opinions, the individual must necessarily be unique. In a world in which there are only so many opinions, the individual can easily choose one without thinking. He relishes the grapple. I want to read these are the words from Areopagitica, his treatise in favor of free speech. Regarding truth, he urges, let her and falsehood grapple. He said, let her and falsehood grapple. Truth and falsehood should grapple. What is interesting about the way he has phrased this is he hasn't said a word about which between the two, or if one to the exclusion of the other, is the thing being censured. That's Milton. That's how he argues. Let truth and falsehood grapple. I will say nothing on whether it is truth or falsehood you would ban. He is seething with under the current criticisms. He is seething with hostility to the world's babblers. It's almost like he's exercising restraint from pointing at one man and then pointing at his enemy and saying that both of them and all of their descendants and all of their ancestors are knaves and fools. I detect a man who is restraining himself from unloading. Let truth and falsehood grapple and see who wins. I almost feel like he wants to say, let the stupids argue which is the more persuasive lie, and I'll live in peace and pursue the truth. And just don't ban me. He wrote this. The language of their public documents, referring to opponents of Cromwell, the language of their public documents is stuffed with piety. The style of Cromwell or his tribunes is to match. There's no damn difference, is he saying. It's the same style. Same bullshit. This is not to say that John Milton thinks that the word of God is fraudulent. It is that he understands that there is no idea so pure that it cannot be usurped and rendered into a lie on the lips of man. Words, ideas, concepts are defenseless against their invocation, and nothing impresses Milton less than the recital of grafted mores, of indented, embossed mores that have been indented into society through education. So now we're going to try to transition into what he says here at the beginning of Book 11. Phenomenal word choice. God, this is a great opening to this. Beginning of Book 11, Paradise Lost. Thus they, as in Adam and Eve, thus they, in lowliest plight, repentant stood praying. For from the mercy seat above, prevenient grace descending, had removed the stony from their hearts and made new flesh, regenerate, grow instead. Here's the line. So they're praying. That sighs now breathed unutterable, which the spirit of prayer inspired, and winged for heaven with speedier flight than loudest oratory. That whole line. That's Milton's theology. The prayers are unutterable. What you say doesn't matter, and I'm not going to tell you what they said. I don't want you just repeating it, then you'll just repeat it too, like any other stupid person. Communication with God is nonverbal. That's what Milton's saying. Communication with God is nonverbal. Do you know who he agrees with? Erasmus. It is not the noise of the lips, but the fervent desire of the mind that beateth the ears of God. That's from Erasmus's Handbook of the Christian Knight. That's Milton's stance. And I think he delights in confusing us with Satan's words. But wait, this guy's saying this? That sounds like something that I'm supposed to believe. He loves that. Why is Satan talking about freedom and ice cream? I like freedom and ice cream. Let truth and falsehood grapple. Let it grapple. Let bullshit grapple with bullshit. And that's all the better because it's like Milton is pointing at both God and Satan and saying, both of you have your flaws. God, you lacked the capacity to create a paradise. Ignorance is not bliss, neither is inaction. As Adam said in the last book, the struggle is not a punishment, the struggle is a reward. Isn't the hero of this epic poem Adam? He played a game of chicken with God and won. God may have known in advance that man was going to eat from the fruit, but before eating from the fruit, Adam knew in advance that God would not destroy them. God's pride rendered him just as predictable as man's greed. Adam still erred and sinned in the process. So much the better in the long run, says John Milton. If man had stayed in the garden, continuing to obey the rule of the tree, it would have been a pathetic demonstration of man's virtue. And Milton has no respect for virtue that is insufficiently tested. We know this because he says that exactly. In Areopagitica, he writes, I cannot praise a fugitive and cloistered virtue, unexercised and unbreathed, that never sallies out and sees her adversaries, but slinks out of the race. And we see this in Paradise Lost, when their prayers go up to God, and Jesus says this to God in bringing him their prayers. I, thy priest, before thee bring, says the Son, fruits of more pleasing savor, fruits of more pleasing savor than those which all the trees of paradise could have produced ere fallen from innocence. These repentant prayers of the sinners are superior to any sort of piety that these two were capable of in a state of innocence. That's what Milton's saying. All that being said, however, Adam and Eve were still wrong. Adam and Eve were still wrong to do it, even though it had that result. Still wrong. God still represents what is good and what is right. The Satan, despite having impelled them down a path that leads them to wisdom and knowledge, I shouldn't say wisdom, but knowledge, he's still wrong and he's still a liar. Even though now the truth of fire, you know how to start a fire now? That's a truth, isn't it? Satan remains a liar, despite having impelled them towards that truth. And in spite of having impelled them towards this repentant outcome. That's the paradoxical thinking of John Milton. It's like if you've ever had a quarrel with a friend or a loved one, and the end result is that the reconciliation afterwards actually brings you closer. That doesn't mean that one or both of you wasn't out of line. That doesn't mean that one or both of you didn't err and stray. You figure out your own mores. You make your own peace with God, and the unutterable, wordless prayer is superior to the memorized one. Only the silent prayer, by definition, is destined for God. The spoken prayer must be, in part, a demonstration for our fellow man. The path towards salvation for John Milton is to, with humility, beg for a mercy that you don't deserve. As Adam says he did to get God's forgiveness here. Line 150, Book 11 of Paradise Lost. He kneeled, and before him humbled all my heart. That's line 150. And as the Archangel Michael descends towards them, trying to figure out what it means, Adam says, line 199 and into 200, we are dust, and thither must return. So now I want to go back to something that the Son said. So the Son intercedes for them. Back to line 30. The Son says to God, now therefore bend thine ear to supplication. Hear his sighs, though mute, unskillful, with what words to pray. Let me interpret for him, me, his advocate and propitiation, all his works on me, good or not good, engraft. So you heard that. Our private relationship with God, according to Milton, is mute. And those prayers, if we go back to line 7 of book 11, winged for heaven with speedier flight than loudest oratory. Unutterable prayers. And one last quote I want to get to from Milton is this. This is from his Second Defense of the English People from 1654. This is on the concept of freedom. He thinks freedom is the same thing as piety. This is what he thinks. Here's the quote. To be free is the same thing exactly as to be pious, wise, just, temperate, self-providing, abstinent from the property of other people. Abstinent from the property of other people. That's what it means to be free. Completely self-reliant in every sense. Your morality is between you and God. Don't try to impose it on others. Then you're not free. And if there are some parts of the Bible you don't like, perhaps one of those rules in Leviticus, and that prompts you to walk away from religion altogether, what we're concluding in this video would tell you this. The person who tells you how to live your life using the Bible can go fuck themselves, and they need to shut up and do a better job of making their prayers unutterable. Your inheritance from your ancestor, Adam, is one in which he broke God's law when there was only one, let alone one of 50 in Leviticus. And I actually think you might be denying yourself. What are you denying yourself? The savory taste of heresy. What did Adam and Eve do the moment they ate from the tree? They fucked. That was the first thing they did. Remember Adam's words from Book 9. If such pleasures be in things to us forbidden, it might be wished for this one tree had been forbidden 10. How many commandments are there? The rules are his gift. Read John Milton.